Good morning, Councillor Bazinet. Would you be able to turn your video and your audio, just give me a test that it's working?
Good morning, Susan.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, all, and I would like to call this meeting to order and to welcome everyone here today. Welcome to all members of council that are joining us both in person and virtually this morning. Welcome to all of our staff, our senior management team that will provide us facts and information so we can make the best decisions in the interest of the corporation of the County of Huron and our 61,000 residents. Welcome to all members of the public that are joining us this morning, and also to all members of the media that are joining us. I would like to indicate at the outset that council meetings are available live through Zoom, and recordings may be posted online on County of Huron's YouTube channel. You may be seen and or heard as part of these broadcasts, and your name, comments, and or presentation materials will become part of the public record. Under my comments this morning, we had a great celebration on the 21st of September on a Saturday evening at the Goderich Legion to recognize Gary Renaud's 50 years of commitment as a paramedic to the County of Huron. And it wasn't a retirement, it was a celebration of 50 years. And Gary has very unselfishly given of his own time, not only in his official role as a paramedic, he has volunteered at many camps and to organizations to act in his professional capacity. And it was great to be able to celebrate that milestone of 50 years as a Huron County paramedic. The following day was a great event in Bayfield. It was the Arts Festival. The main street was closed off to all vehicular traffic, and there was a great crowd. And to our economic development staff that organized this in conjunction with the Village of Bayfield, congratulations and thanks to you for that. Rick Sickinger was very involved in that, as was Karen, and it was great to see so many people enjoying themselves. Indeed, it was a beautiful day, and it was great to be with Mayor Paul Klopp at that event, and it was great for Huron County and all of our residents. I also had a meeting on behalf of WOWC with Matthew Ray 2 weeks ago, and it was a very worthwhile meeting. We had a great discussion regarding healthcare in Huron and Perth, and it was very advantageous for Huron County. Also, with that, I attended a Community Futures meeting, their annual meeting, and they certainly do great innovative work, not only in Huron County, but also beyond. Monday and Tuesday was a great event at Bruce Power, and it was the Clean Energy Frontier Conference. And it was CAO Wark was also in attendance, as was Councillor Paul Heffer and Councillor Bazinet and our ECDEV staff. The opportunities that we have in Huron County because of Nuclear Innovation Institute are amazing. And it's not only for employment today, it is for future generations. And the opportunities for these great compensated employment opportunities, and it doesn't matter whether a person wants to be a lawyer, an engineer, specializing in finance, accounting, communications, trades, maintenance. The opportunities are endless. And we're very fortunate to have been able to both develop that relationship between Huron, Bruce, and Gray with NII, and all three wardens were also in attendance at that event yesterday. So I did want to comment on that. We do have the agenda before us, and I would like to indicate at the outset that items 9, 2, and 3 have been flipped for continuity of the discussion. Item 13 has been deleted. That is the walk-in freezer homes. It will not be discussed today. And we do have a closed session, and we're just changing a couple of words from Dashwood to Exeter and adding Andrew Maver, Manager of Public Works, to be in attendance with that. So with those changes, I would entertain a mover and a seconder to approve our agenda as amended. Past Warden Ginn and Councillor P. Heffer. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you. Do any members of council have pecuniary interest or general nature thereof of any agenda item that we have today? Seeing none, I thank you. We do have two sets of minutes, 18th and 19th of September, and I would entertain a mover and a seconder for the approval of these minutes, please. And that is Alvin McClellan and Councillor Vanstone. Are there any questions on these minutes? And if not, all in favor of the motion for acceptance. And that is approved. Thank you. Under delegations today, it is a privilege for me to welcome Daniel Siegel to address Huron County Council on behalf of Siegel Construction on the authorization of municipal housing development. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Warden. Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely, we can. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Well, thanks for hearing me today. My name's Daniel Siegel. I'm a Tarion builder who's been doing laneway houses and garden suites in Toronto and Hamilton since they became legal. And about 2 months ago, I decided, you know what? There's a much bigger market for this, and it's not homeowners, it's municipalities. And since then, I've contacted about half of the 444 municipalities in Ontario, and by the end of October, I should have all of them contacted. I do delegations like this several times a day all across Ontario to promote attainable housing primarily. I know that you're an upper tier municipality, so I'm going to tailor my conversation to just general affordable housing because that is within your mandate. Bill C-23, Building Homes Faster, together with the BFF fund, the Building Faster fund, I think is a generalized push from the Ontario government to download the responsibility of housing to the municipalities. And frankly, there's a need for housing everywhere. Every single delegation I do, there's somebody who agrees with the general premise. What I'm here to do today is to present a few solutions that are scalable and don't require government funding to get off the ground. They're relatively risk adjusted so that the initial capital requirements to start a project are fairly low. And the goal of my presentation today is to put forward a draft resolution to start looking at specific projects together with staff to be able to build houses faster. Being a Tarion builder, I do offer the ability to sell the houses after they're constructed on the public markets, on MLS, etc. And frankly, I think that is the entry and exit strategies that a lot of municipalities are missing in their housing strategy. And so without further ado, I want to just show a few pictures to get an idea of the types of housing that I'm looking at doing. So these units are prefabricated 680 square foot pre-constructed houses. They come on a flatbed truck. A crane puts them into place. And from start to finish, it's somewhere between 4 to 6 months until they're completed. Now, they are stackable. So if you wanted higher density, you could put 2 stories on, 3 stories. And they don't need to be arranged in this configuration. You could do row housing like this. My generalized push when I talk to lower tier municipalities is the idea.
Sorry, Daniel, I'm going to just interrupt you just for 1 second. As for our discussion, we did talk about all your presentation materials were supposed to be sent to us prior to, and this was not. And I did indicate that we don't permit share screening of stuff that we haven't actually seen.
Perfect. I'm sorry about that. So I'll keep it as general as possible here. I don't think municipalities should be dropping into their operating or capital budgets to build housing. I think they should be done through a municipal housing corporation. I know that upper tier municipalities already do their not-for-profit housing through a municipal housing corporation. But I believe in the Municipal Act, there is clauses for doing municipal bonds. And I think housing is a perfect example of a type of project that would be suitable to do through a municipal bond offering. I know that Toronto does it. I know that a few other municipalities do debt issues for projects that have an identifiable cash flow associated with it if they're running it as social housing. If the exit strategy here is to build attainable housing, that's something a little bit different. I don't think that is within your jurisdiction. If it was, I'd be more than pleased. My definition for attainable housing is the type of housing your children would move in or your children's children would move into the moment they leave their house of their parents. The mayor of Southwest Oxford put it very eloquently. He said the target market for attainable housing is the newlywed and the nearly dead. And frankly, that is a great definition. And the reason this is needed is entry-level housing, something under $500,000 is very hard to come by. And since the wartime housing boom in the 30s and 40s, and then again in the 80s, this type of housing has not been built. Developers are more interested in doing 4-bedroom, 5-bath, larger developments. And frankly, I don't blame them. Each one of these units that I'm presenting to you today have an internal rate of return of 10%. My cost of debt is 15, and that's frankly why I'm not buying a large plot of land and developing it, because I'd be losing my shirt. The key to these types of developments is access to low-cost debt, and municipalities could issue bonds on the capital markets with a minimum tranche of $10 million, and they'd probably get something around 4.5% on that debt. So the purpose of this resolution is just to open the door to having these types of conversations. I know that you already have a community improvement plan. I know that you're interested in housing. I come to you today with a scalable community type that might fit something that you're looking for. And the purpose of this resolution is just to look at it from a 30,000-foot view and say, yep, I think we do need housing. Yep, Bill C-23 is there. And let's start to look at some projects that make sense and could be replicatable. That pretty much concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. I just also want to point out that as a Tarion builder, the idea of selling the houses after they're constructed is the key here. The only other entity that's currently doing attainable housing with a sales component, I think, is Habitat for Humanity, but I might be wrong. But they're not looking at doing tract development as far as I'm concerned. And this is the type of housing that I think provides vitality to a community. And if the municipality could assist, I think the provincial and federal governments would be very happy with somebody proposing solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for your presentation to us this morning. And I'm going to open it up to all members of council if there's any questions or comments on this presentation. Seeing none? Oh, Councillor Klopp, please.
Yeah, are we discussing the recommendation here, which is just basically to receive this for information today?
That is my understanding, correct?
And that's all? Okay.
That's right.
Then I'll make that motion.
Okay.
But with comment?
Yeah, after a seconder. Okay, so moved by Councillor Klopp that we receive this for information, and the seconder is Councillor Vanstone. Please comment, Councillor Klopp.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Just maybe you're not aware back out here in the country, but we actually have 3 companies, and I'm glad you showed that picture, by the way. I respect that our staff reminded you shouldn't, but when you first were, I didn't pick it up in the discussions when I read what was sent. So just be aware, we have 3 companies that employ people right here in Southwest Ontario, basically that build homes the same type as you that can be affordable, and they work with many contractors and if and excuse me, I'm a little proud, but I would say they're actually better. But take that, nothing personal, just my pride of being from Huron County. Also, when I read that you were having to pay 15% interest, in talking to contractors that are building houses, and actually a young fella, I'm not going to name names because it's not important, but just for anybody that doesn't think I'm making it up, and he's talking 7 and 8%, in that signal area from lending institutions. So, sir, I think you should maybe shop around a bit better. But at the end of the day, your presentation, I get it. You're trying to sell yourself, but I respectfully think that we've got about as best as we can from a county perspective and the taxpayers that pay property tax. We spend 100% dollars on a building. I disagreed with that, but I respect that we're doing that. And at the end of the day, we don't build stuff. It's our local contractors. And let's make sure we're keeping and working with our planning department to stand behind them or beside them to keep things moving. And that's what we're doing. But I appreciate yourself, sir, selling yourself. I understand through some colleagues, you might be coming to Blue Water, and we will be on the agenda. Of course, we always respect anyone coming in, but my position won't be much different. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any additional comments from any members of council? And if not, thank you very much, Danielle, for your presentation to us today. And we do have a motion that has been moved and seconded to receive this report from Daniel Siegel of Siegel Construction as presented for information. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And again, thanks, Danielle. Number 7 brings us to councillor comments. Do any members of council have any comments that they would like to share at this time? And I'll go first to councillor McClellan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I realize that later on there's going to be some work done on whether it be procedural or whatever. And I'm just asking that if we can put out for consideration for those more senior council members that maybe have a failing memory and remember stuff later on, could we possibly move the councillors' comments to later in the agenda? Because sometimes your memory gets jogged by things that are on the agenda. And if council would consider doing that, it might avoid some mishaps down the road. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. That will come under consideration, and thank you for addressing it at this appropriate time. Councillor, was there anyone else that had any councillor comments? Councillor Password again, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a conversation before the meeting with the other Councillor McClellan, but I did talk to a bunch of councillors at the AMO conference about one of the delegations we had regarding drainage and the ability for municipalities to claim the 1/3 grant that farmers are eligible for. Turns out that was not good information. So I realized that I had not mentioned it to a lot of people I spoke to at that during the conference. So I figured when we were getting it right from the minister, it was correct. It turns out it wasn't. So just so everyone's aware of that.
Thank you for sharing that information with everyone. Thank you. Any additional councillor comments at this time? And seeing none, thank you for these. With that, we have a consent agenda that encompasses 8.1 to 8.5. Is there anything that anyone would like to address in there? And if not, I would entertain a mover and a seconder that items 8.1 through 8.5 be approved with actions as noted. Councillor Finch and Dietrich. All in favor of the motion? You want to speak to something, Councillor? Please. Councillor Van Stone, please.
On number 2, the consent application from Ross and Glen and Pennebaker and Johnson Farms.
We will get to that.
We're not down there yet?
No.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. And we have, everyone has voted to accept this, and I will ask for that again for confirmation. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Under number 9, the planning and development, it is a privilege for me to welcome Nicole Androlia. Nicole is joining us. We have 2 new staff members, and Nicole is joining us as filling the county biologist and stewardship coordinator position over the next year. Nicole is a recent graduate of the Masters of Biology program from Wilfrid Laurier University. And I read you're very excited to start your career here in county. And we hope you maintain your career here in Huron County and work with the many landowners and partner organizations from across the country. So welcome, Nicole. Secondly, I would also like to welcome Malcolm Fletcher. Malcolm is a Goderich native and a grade 12 student at GDCI who has joined the Planning and Development Department this semester for his double Credit Co-op. Malcolm will be spending his mornings with the department from September through to January to learn more about the day-to-day operations of municipal planners. So it is a privilege on behalf of Huron County Council to welcome both Malcolm and Nicole, and let's show them our appreciation for joining. Thank you very much and enjoy your time here in Huron County. We will now move on to item 9.1, and that is the consent application C51-2024, Stephen Rieger. And I would like to welcome Selena McIntosh to address the council on this. Welcome, Selena.
Okay. Good morning, Warden McNeil and members of Huron County Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you this morning regarding consent application C51-2024. The property subject to this application is 38060 Mount Carmel Drive in the municipality of South Huron, and the owner and applicant for this file is Stephen Rieger. So here is a 2020 aerial photo just of the property subject to this application. It's just outlined in orange here. The applicant is seeking to sever the existing residents on this property from the farm under the surplus resident severance policies. Here's a sketch just showing the applicant's proposal. We have the proposed severed parcel outlined in orange here, and then the proposed retained parcel outlined, or sorry, my apologies. The severed parcel is outlined in green, and the proposed retained parcel is outlined in orange. The land to be severed is about 1.46 hectares or 3.6 acres, and it does contain a residence, a storage shed, a silo, and a barn. The vacant agricultural land that is proposed to be retained is approximately 40 hectares or just under 100 acres. So this is the photo of the lands proposed to be severed. We're just looking northwest here from Mount Carmel Drive. So first I'll go through the public and agency comments received for this application, and then I'll move on into the planning analysis. So in terms of comments received from the public, there were a couple neighbors who phoned in just with questions about the application. One neighbor did provide a written request for a notice of decision. He did want to clarify that he is not in objection to the application. One individual did indicate that they may provide a verbal objection at the public meeting today. Municipal staff have no objections as it pertains to this application, but they did provide a number of comments as it pertains to potential conditions of approval should council look to approve this application. Those are just listed on the screen here. These are standard conditions for this type of consent in South Huron. The two I'll bring council's attention to specifically are the decommissioning of the existing well on that severed parcel, as well as the removal of any cross connections with the municipal water system. This property is serviced by the municipality of North Middlesex Municipal Water, as North Middlesex is the neighboring municipality on the south side of Mount Carmel Drive. North Middlesex accordingly did provide comments on this application, and they wish to echo South Huron's comments regarding the decommissioning of the private well on that severed parcel, as well as removal of any cross connections with the municipal water system. They do entrust South Huron to clear those conditions, but they did echo those comments. Further, Huron County Public Works did provide comment, as they are the regulatory roads authority for Mount Carmel Drive. They have no concerns with this application. So this is just a close-up of the severance sketch for council's information here. The thing I'd like to draw council's attention to is the geothermal loop that you see directly west of the residence. It's in the red lines there. That geothermal bed does service the residents on the severed parcel, and you'll see that it does cross over into the retained parcel based on the proposed severance lines. Accordingly, it is recommended that if this application is approved, that an easement be registered over that geothermal bed in favor of the severed parcel for future maintenance. So I'll now move on to the review of the applicable planning policies. The subject property is designated agriculture in South Huron's official plan, and it is zoned AG1 or general agriculture in the zoning bylaw. It is considered to be within the prime agricultural area in accordance with the 2020 provincial policy statement, or PPS. The PPS does prohibit the creation of new residential lots within the prime agricultural area, except for a resident surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation. The owner and applicant in this case does not own another farm operation, and therefore he individually does not qualify for the severance under that farm consolidation policy. However, the owner intends to continue to retain or live in the severed parcel and sell off the retained lands to a purchaser who does qualify, that being Van Osh Farms Limited. So if council chooses to recommend approval of this application, a recommended condition is that an undertaking be provided to ensure that that retained farmland is registered under the name of Van Osh Farms Limited to ensure that this application does remain consistent with the PPS. So in addition to requirements similar to the PPS regarding restricting lot creation in the prime agricultural area, but allowing for surplus resident severances, the Huron County official plan also contains a number of specific criteria for these severances. One such criteria that is echoed as well in the South Huron official plan is the requirement that there has been no previous separation of land for residential purposes from the farm property as it existed on June 28th, 1973, other than within a settlement area. So June 28, 1973, that is the date that the first Huron County official plan came into full force and effect. And it basically marks when comprehensive severance policies began to apply across Huron County. So the logic behind this criteria is twofold. It basically ensures that folks who pursued severances prior to 1973 are not penalized under the policies of today, but it also aims to ensure that further fragmentation of the agricultural land base is restricted for lands previously severed under comprehensive land use policies. So in the case of the subject property, the property immediately east of the farm, which is on the screen here, just where I'm circling with my mouse, that being 38102 Mount Carmel Drive or Mount Carmel Line, was severed from the subject lands in 1975 under previous retirement lot severance policies that applied. So accordingly, this application does fail to meet the criteria of the Huron County and South Huron official plans to be eligible for the proposed surplus severance. And since the application does not conform with the county official plan and South Huron official plan, it also is not does not meet the requirement of the Planning Act under Section 51 that it be in compliance with the official plans. So as this consent application does not conform to those official plans, it is recommended that this application for severance be denied. This application was heard by South Huron Council at their September 3rd regular meeting. At that time, South Huron Council did choose to recommend to County Council that this application be approved, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report for your information. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions of Council at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation to County Council today, Selena. And excuse me, I would like to indicate that we are now entering the public portion of our meeting for this application, and I will ask if there's any comments from those either in person or virtually in the order of those that are in opposition, those that are in favor, then provide the opportunity for the applicant and then subsequently the owner if they would choose to do so. Then I will call on the local municipality for your comments of your decision and then open it up to all members of County Council. So if you are joining us virtually, please use the raised hand function. So with that, I would ask if there are any members of the public that would like to speak in opposition to this application before us. Clerk Cronin, are you aware of any?
At this time, no one wishes to speak in opposition of this application.
Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this application, either in person or virtually?
At this time, I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Thank you. Would the applicant care to make any comments at this time? Seeing none. Okay. And the owner? Okay. I will now go to South Huron for your decision on this when it came to your council, please.
Yeah, thank
Mayor
you to the
Finch.
warden. We at South Huron Council did approve it with those conditions. One of the conditions we were very concerned about, and it is in the municipal requirements, is that the private well currently located on the severed parcel must be decommissioned. As you know, so many risks can be taken with having cross contamination. So other than that, I support this severance based on the conditions listed here.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now I'll open up to County Council to ask any questions or provide any comments to Selena for clarification on this. Councillor Klopp, please.
Thank you. I guess it's maybe too directed to the council. The line in there about Van Osh Farms and being registered, was that part of the discussion that you had at your council chamber? Or is that something that's been added here today?
I don't recall.
Okay, thank you for that. Selena,
Maybe the applicant can answer that then, sir.
Selena, do you have any comments for that in response, please?
Yeah, thank you. Through the warden, there were no questions from South Huron Council at the time it was presented as it pertains to that specific condition. So no discussion at that time.
So it was part of the presentation.
Through the warden, correct. Yep.
Okay. And okay, well, that says a lot to me. I'm leaning to the recommendation of the lower tier. This property here, if you look at the building, and in all due respect to the history of that family that owned it for a long time, the house was, as you can see in the pictures we have, you see the original building, and it was, with all due respect, a big building getting tired. We had a family move in, Steve, and he and his family have spent a lot of money there, and pride to Huron County and to South Huron, and the fact that we do allow surplus residents. The applicant has been up front, and unless he's changed his mind here, he's even going to be registering Van Osh Farms on it. So I think he's gone about as close that we can to show that he's not putting councillors in a bind if someone else comes along and wants a severance. He's moved a lot, and the reality of it is, I think it does make sense what the local council did to move this along. But I'm in favor of what the lower tier did. Do we need a motion for that, or is it local council is going to do that?
No, you could make that motion. Just hang on to that for further discussion, and I'll go to Councillor Finch, please.
Yeah, thank you. And just for the council, it is an established farm property. It's a house. It's very majestic looking. Steve has put a lot of money and effort into it. So again, as part of the fabric of Huron County, it does add to the value for people traveling through the municipality to see such a majestic looking home that's been so well looked after and upgraded. And both Mr. Van Osh and Mr. Egger are very credible people in our community. So I have no issue with that severance at all if it helps council.
Okay, thank you for that. Any additional comments? I'll go next to Past Warden again, please.
Yeah, excuse me. I can accept this proposal to recommend approval. The only issue is the previous severance, but that's 49 years ago. That's a long time ago, and I don't know that really brings anything into play. You know, it's a surplus residence. The end result is, you know, what the policy was put in place for, and that's what I always look for is what's the end result of this. And so I'm going to be in favor of that motion as well.
Okay, any additional comments? And seeing none, we have a recommended motion for denial following the planner's recommendation. However, if there is a different sentiment for approval, I would entertain a motion from anyone on this. And it would be Past Warden again I'll look to.
Yes, I would make a motion to approve the application.
Approve with conditions. Yep. Seconder for that would be Councillor Goderich. And that would be that the council of the County of Huron approve this severance with conditions. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And thank you very much, Selena, for that. Selena, what would you recommend to us as regarding the second motion, the effect of public and agency comments on this decision, please?
Yes, thank you. I would recommend 2A, no formal public comments were received on this application, so there was no effect on the decision. And 5B, concerns were received by the planning department on conformity to the official plan. Comments were thoroughly considered, but the effect did not influence the decision of council to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So the recommended effect of public and agency comments is 2A and 5B, and I would look for a mover and a seconder, and that would be Councillor Harding and Klopp. All in favor of this motion? And that again is carried, and thank you very much, Selena, for that. Moving on to number 2, that is the consent application of Ross and Glenna Pennebaker and Johnson Farms Limited. And I would welcome Megan Tid-Hernick to address council on this application. Please, Megan.
Good morning. Just let me set up my presentation here. Okay. Good morning, Warden and members of County Council. I'm Megan Tid-Hernick, and I'm the planner for Ashfield, Coburn, Wawanosh. This morning, we are here to talk about consent application C43 2024, and this is located at 37656 Blythe Road. The subject property here is outlined in orange. It is 100-acre farm. The application is to sever the 100 acres into 2 50-acre parcels. And this is shown by the blue dashed line on the map there. The severed portion of the property, shown in purple, is vacant agricultural land that will be merged with the adjacent property known as 37695 Nile Road, and that is shown in green on the map. The remaining 50 acres, shown in yellow, has a house, shed, barn, and agricultural land associated with it. It is this remnant parcel that doesn't meet the policies that we'll be talking about in a minute. So the application was circulated to neighbors and partner agencies. During the commenting period, one comment was received by a neighbor seeking clarification on the application, but no concerns were raised at that time. The property is regulated by Maitland Valley Conservation Authority due to the proximity to a wetland in the area that is zoned natural environment. MVCA staff reviewed the application and did not have a concern with the severance with regards to natural hazards. ACW staff had no concerns with the proposed severance. ACW Council heard the application at our September 10th meeting, and they agreed with the planner's recommendation to deny the application. So some of my comments to ACW Council, as well as yourselves. The PPS states that prime agricultural areas shall be protected for the long-term use of agriculture. The PPS, the Huron County Official Plan, and the ACW Official Plan discourage lot creation in these prime agricultural areas, but they may be permitted for agricultural uses provided they meet a certain set of criteria. You know, they're kept to a minimum size, surplus farm residences, or infrastructure and utility services. The ACW official plan is more specific, and it states that where parcels are being conveyed for agricultural purposes, a consent may be granted provided both the severed and retained lands are a minimum of 38 hectares or 98 acres. So the division of a 40-acre or 100-acre parcel is not permitted. Due to the subject property being designated extractive in the official plan, that is shown in purple on the left-hand map there, the aggregate policies were also reviewed. So aggregate extraction is seen as an interim use and will permit the extraction, provided it is returned to agriculture after rehabilitation. The ACW official plan will permit severances in the extractive area, provided it meets the general conformity of the agricultural policies. From the previous slide, we went over the agricultural policies, and it just doesn't meet those criteria. So on the right-hand side, we have the aggregate resources inventory mapping. So it could have potential for extraction. It is noted that the Johnson pit is currently to the west of this subject property. So due to the application not being consistent with the provincial policy statement, it doesn't conform to the policies of the county or the ACW official plan. It is recommended that County Council deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation to us, Megan. And again, this is a public meeting and we will go in the same order. And so I will ask if there's anyone that would like to speak in favor, in opposition to this application, members of the public. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak in favor of this application? Nothing virtually, Clerk?
If anyone is attending virtually and wishes to speak to this application, please use the raised hand function. At this time, I see no one that wishes to speak in opposition or in favor of the application.
Okay, thank you very much. Would the applicant care to make any comments at this time? And if you would, please go to the podium, turn on the microphone, introduce yourself first and last name, please, and we welcome your comments.
Check, check. Good morning, Warden McNeil. My name is Mark Michael McHugh, last name spelled M-A-C, capital K-E-W. I'm legal counsel to E.S. Johnston Farms. As you can see from the map that we saw from our planning committee, the planning division, the property sought to be severed is adjacent and abuts the Johnston property. The intention of the applicant, Johnston Farms Limited, is to use the property for agricultural purposes and to expand the existing vineyard, which is on the Johnston property. At this point in time, it is acknowledged that there is an extracting pit located on the Johnston property. It is not the intention of the Johnston applicant to mine the subject parcel. It is their intention to expand the vineyard operation on their property. At this point in time, there's approximately 8 acres of grapes planted on the Johnston farm. It is the intention of the Johnston farm owners to expand the vineyard into the property that abuts their vineyard as it stands now. There is no intention to extract on this property. In order to do so, they would have to amend their license with the ministry, and that process would be going through council in any event. So please, members, through you to council, it is not our intention to extract aggregate from this parcel. It is our intention to join it to the existing vineyard to expand that growing, no pun intended, industry. It's an industry that I know is growing in Huron. I actually stayed at the winery last night, and I believe that this could be productive for the community at large. So with respect to the decision or the comments made by our planning department, I submit that this application makes sense, and although it does raise issues with the aggregate, there's no intention to mine that property. Thank you. I'm up to any questions from council if you wish, through you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you very much for your comments to council. Does the applicant care to make any comments at this time? Eugene?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, please go to the microphone if you would and just introduce yourself first and last name, and then we welcome your comments.
Thank you very much. I'm Eugene Johnson. I own E.S. Johnston Farms. This would just, with our family farm, just adding this property would kind of make it a real viable farm when we're finished all the aggregate. So that's kind of what we have in mind there. So we plan on succession with the farm, and that would make it more viable for somebody to actually make a living farming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Johnson. Would the owner care to make any comments at this time? We're good. This did come to ACW Council, and we recommended denial of it also. We were concerned of protecting farmland and also the division of a 100-acre farm into 250s. And if we did that, we know the precedents that would set, and that the amount of individuals, landowners presently in the county that would also be looking for that. Is that accurate comments? And I'm going to defer to our Deputy Mayor Van Stone and ACW. Councillor Van Stone, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. That is accurate. And since that's happened, the night in question that we had our council meeting, neither Mr. Pennebaker or Mr. Johnson could be there, and that left kind of a void. We only heard from one side of the thing, and since then, and finding out what the Johnsons are proposing, is I have changed. I think it should go because, for one thing, we are not taking away any agricultural land. We're just mainly changing ownership. We're moving 50 acres over to the Johnsons so they can do a better job of farming. we're leaving 50 acres, which is a farmable commodity anyways. Like there's lots of people living on 50 acres. So in finding out more information, which we should have had that night, I'm proposing that this go through as a severance and let the farming begin, because I think it would be better for both parties to have this done and they stay AG1, and it'll be better for both. So I thank you very much for that.
Thank you for your comments. Now I'm going to open it up to all members of County Council to ask any questions that they would care to of our planner. Councillor Klopp and then Past Warden McClellan, please, in that order.
Thank you. I'm curious on this, and this I guess goes to the Mr. Johnston and the owner. Why did you not attend the meeting of the planning department at the lower tier? I'm just curious on why that didn't happen.
Okay, thanks for the question. Mr. Johnston, just turn on the microphone when you make your comments, if you would, please.
There, can you hear me there? Yeah, why we weren't in attendance is everybody kind of knows what we were thinking of there, and maybe we should have been in attendance, and we hate to cause a commotion at council meetings.
Thanks for your comment. Yep. Past Warden McClellan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I kind of go along with Councillor Vanstone, and part of the reason is that, and I don't disagree that ACW can make a decision on their own properties, but we've had the arguments here before when we've talked about official plans for different lower tiers, and some lower tiers do allow 50-acre parcels. And the argument that was brought to County Council was that when you've got those smaller parcels, it makes it easier for younger farmers to possibly get into the business. And if that in fact is a valid argument, then why are we opposing the opportunity to have those smaller parcels to get younger farmers interested with something that they might be able to afford?
Okay, thanks for that. I will defer to our Director of Planning, Sandra Weber, for a comment on that, if you would. Please, Sandra.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through to County Council. I just want to clarify the 50-acre severance policy. So in fact, there are no policies across all of Huron County to permit the severance of 50-acre parcels. So 50-50 acre splits are not permitted. We're a prime agricultural area. We're trying not to fragment the land, and our minimum lot size is roughly 100 acres. I think what Councillor McClellan is thinking about is some municipalities do have a bit of an exception to that, and where if you have a 150-acre parcel, there are policies to allow the 50 to be severed off of the 100. It's a large parcel for a farmer to have to keep together forever. So the only opportunity for 50-acre severances in some municipalities is to allow for a 50 off of a 150-acre parcel. There are no policies across the entire county to allow the 50-50 split of a 100-acre parcel.
Thank you very much for that clarification. A follow-up, please, Past Warden McClellan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden. In response to that, does that mean that if in fact the person that wanted to buy the 50 acres and join it to their property, if they bought the whole 100 acres and then after the fact wanted to sever off 50 acres, would that then fall under the policy that the planner had just discussed?
Okay, thank you for the question. Again, I'll go for clarification to Director Weber, please.
That certainly would be a loophole. However, no, the answer to that is no. So when someone has a 200-acre parcel, the policies say that you can't split a 50-50. So they would be allowed to split 100-100. They wouldn't be allowed to split 150 and a 50.
Okay, good clarification. Thank you very much for the question and the clarification. Past Warden again, please.
Yeah, I have two issues I need to be clarified. And the first one is, why is this considered a severance when it's going to be merged with another property? To me, this is more of a lot line adjustment than it is a severance, because it's not going to result in a separate property. It's going to be merged with a larger piece of the property. So I'd like just clarification on that first, and then I have another question.
Thank you for the question. Director Weber, please.
Through you, Mr. Warden. When we're reviewing severance applications, both the severed and the retained parcels need to comply with the policies. So in this case, with the 50 acres that's merging, that would be added. You're correct about that. However, the 50-acre remnant parcel does not comply with the policies. So, it would allow any farmer to, any neighboring farmers to do a 50-50 split and add the 50 to theirs and be left with a 50-acre parcel. So we're trying to discourage the fragmentation of the land to allow for flexibility for different types of agricultural operations in the future. So when we're dividing this in half and leaving a 50-acre retained parcel, that's not leaving the flexibility for different types of agriculture in the future, with the minimum lot size being 100 acres.
Okay, thank you for that. And you had a follow-up, Pastor Warden, again, please?
Yes. If we could just pull the map up again, but the property to the east appears to me to be split into 250s. And I just wonder what the history of that is.
Okay, thank you for your question. Yeah, we'll get the map up and then I'll look to staff again for comment.
Just while Megan is pulling up the map, I don't know, unless Megan knows, I don't know the exact answer to that question. However, I suspect that that's a historical severance prior to severance policies, because the county has never permitted 50 splits in the last 50 years. So it's my suspicion that that is a historical severance prior to official plan policies.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Okay. Comment, Megan, please.
Sorry, I was having a bit of technical difficulties there, but yes, the property to the east is 50-50, and in my research, I could not find when that occurred.
Okay, thank you for that. So very well, it could have been, as Director Weber indicated. Councillor Klopp, please.
Thank you. With regards to the issue of our policy of 100 acres, I believe that's the OMAF, from the OMAF department. The argument always was made that why it was put to 100 was because the farmer couldn't make a living on less. Some of you know, I have a past history. They somehow got a picture of me here now. I can't deny it. I was in that ministry and had some say and had a discussion. And I can tell you, even back in the 1990s already, we argued that point to be pretty superficial anymore. 50 acres or 100. The word viable, we said, at least let's take that word out. I think it's, I know for a fact, it isn't about the acreage. It's about the ability for a person, young or old. If you're in chickens or if you're in something that's vegetables, you can have a whole lot less acres. It's about how much money you keep, I guess, as my father always said, not how much money you spend. So I think that is something that's, and it brings it up to this unique situation here. I heard the local council, and I try very hard to follow the local council, but in hearing the discussion of two councillors, and then using the argument that the 100 acres policy, because it's going to be viable, that I think the Minister of Agriculture, now that they changed the name, trust me, I was trying to get that word viable taken out of back then, but I didn't have enough time in my life there. I think that's sort of a very mute argument. The history of Huron County and our small towns, there was lots of 25-acre farms. Clearly there was 50, and the world hasn't ended. I just have, so I'm leaning towards, if the motion is that it's to allow it, that's where I'm not buying the argument anymore about 50 acres versus 100 viable. That's just a non-argument anymore in the real world of agriculture. So but the concern I have is, and when I asked the question why they didn't come, and they said it creates some excitement, and when we read one of the letters in here through the chair, they weren't so much against the severance. It was the whole letter was about gravel extraction, which is a fair argument. and we can have that. But it wasn't real to severance. Now today, so I accept I didn't want to go to that meeting, although I would strongly suggest you go to the meetings, but that's here or there now. But they're saying that we're hearing through their solicitor, it's not going to be extraction. It's going to be cultivated for a crop. How can I, to respect the council that voted the other way, how am I to, and I get this question for the new potential owner, if it's allowed, that you don't down the road rip up the grapes and then ask for extraction, because that is, to me, wouldn't be insulting to me, I guess, in my personal view, if I'm leaning that way. So you're here. Are you going to put your name on the line or what? I guess I want to hear it right from the horse's mouth. How are you going to guarantee that it doesn't, in the foreseeable future, become a gravel pit?
Okay, thanks for that. I'm going to go to Director Weber for your comments regarding policy, if you would please, Director.
Thank you, Warden McNeil. Just on the discussion of viability, yeah, the term viability is not used in the policies anymore. It's about, keeping large enough parcels, 100-acre parcels, to allow for flexibility in the changes of agriculture. So allowing for different types of agriculture to occur over time. So it's not about whether a farm is viable or not. It's about not fragmenting the land base to allow and not restrict the opportunity to switch to different types of agriculture over time, and not fragment that land base into smaller parcels, which could more so limit to the opportunity to change to different types of agriculture in the future. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
And just for clarification, this is the policy statement of Huron County and ACW. Is that correct?
Correct. It's all levels. It comes from the province. It's the PPS. It's the county. And for the history of 50 years in Huron County, we have not been doing 50-50 splits.
Thank you for that. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Klopp, please?
Well, and thank you because of that. But we did use the word viable to us non-farmers here. I guess I did win that one back then. I forgot, but it keeps coming up, viable. Then the issue is we want to keep it flexible for farmers. Farmers will decide what flexible is. Actually the argument that this owner is bringing forward is he wants to increase his size so that it is flexible for them. So I think, again, I just go back to what I'm kind of guessing is the issue for, and it is for me too, about is it going to stay in grapes and not have something that in 6 or 10 years even, and all of a sudden it is, because that's an insult to the local council. You can insult me. I'm used to it, but I at least want the question answered.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Klopp. The applicant, would you care to make any comments, or your solicitor? That's your call. Response to the question, please.
The parcel we seek to obtain is going to be planted with a unique crop, a crop that can only grow, again, no pun intended, an industry in Huron County. The concerns of council, through you to council, about the property being used for aggregate purposes down the road, I think could be addressed by this submission. That my client undertakes and covenants to put a restrictive covenant on this parcel that it will not be mined. That's forever and a day, members, through you to council. That's not an undertaking. That's invariable. It's on title. Cannot be changed.
Okay, thank you. You're good to that. Okay, thank you. So
I thank you for that now, but I'm just, and I respect that, but from a technical point of view, can that be part of the motion? If someone makes a motion, can it be, how we say certain conditions? Can that be done?
I will defer to staff for comment, please.
I think we would need to do a little bit more research on that. I think there are things that the registry office is not allowing anymore to be registered there, and so I think we would need to look into that a little bit further. I think it still doesn't address the main issue, which is the fragmentation of the land and not complying with the agricultural and long-term protection of agriculture in the county.
Yeah, and that's what we're here to discuss. Okay, any additional comments? The last one will be to pass word again.
If that severed piece was part of the Johnson farm now, it could be severed off that 50 acres. Is that correct?
Thanks for the question, Director.
But we can't go the other way.
Oh, sorry, I think it would be a landlocked parcel. I don't think it would have any road access.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Councillor Noel, you just get in under the line.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. It's just a quick question. Is there no opportunity to lease the land to grow the grapes as opposed to a severance and a purchase? And then you would be able to do the farming you want to do and not offend any of the official plans or the Planning Act? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director, do you care to comment, please?
Through you, Warden McNeil. Yes, absolutely. That is always the other option, is to rent or lease land from a neighbor rather than permanently creating the lots. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. So we have a recommended motion for denial. We've had a fulsome conversation, and I would look forward to someone making a motion. I see Councillor Vanstone, please.
Yes, Mr. Warden, thank you. I would like to change that motion. I would like to make a motion that we concur with the applicant and pass the severance. Thank you.
So your motion is to approve with the conditions presented.
Yes.
We have a seconder for that. Pass Warden McClellan. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion for approval with conditions? Opposed? Clerk Cronin, please.
Motion's defeated 7-8.
Okay, thank you very much. I will entertain a subsequent motion for denial. Is that yeah, we have to have a motion, so it would be, yeah, the printed motion, the agenda for denial would be moved by Councillor Jayheffer, seconded by Councillor Harding. All in favor of denial of this application, hands up, please. Opposed? Clerk Cronin, please.
Motion carries 8-7.
Thank you very much to everyone for your fulsome and thoughtful discussion in this. What, Megan, would you suggest to us as to the effect of public and agency comments on this decision, please?
The effect of public and agency comments is 2A and 6B.
Thank you very much. It has been recommended that the effect of public and agency comments in this decision be 2A and 6B, and I would entertain a mover and a seconder for these, please. Councillor Dietrich and P. Heffer, all in favor of this motion. And that is carried. Thank you very much. And thanks very much, Megan, for your presentation to us. Moving on to agenda item number 3, that is the new provincial planning statement. And it is a privilege to welcome Denise Van Amersfoort to present to us on this morning. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you, Warden, and good morning to all members of council. We're here this morning to give a presentation on the new provincial planning statement. This document now replaces what was known as the provincial policy statement, as well as replacing the Places to Grow Act under, or sorry, the growth plan under the Places to Grow Act. It represents another fundamental change to how planning is done in Ontario. So my comments this morning are going to be focused on those matters which are of most impact for the County of Huron. As they've replaced the Growth Act, there are a lot of changes to the provincial planning statement, many of which are targeted on those municipalities which would be the fastest growing, more urban context in sort of the greater Golden Horseshoe. Many of those policies will not have effect for us here in Huron, so we will keep my comments this morning focused on the matters that will be of most pertinent to our county council and local councils. So going through by sections, certainly planning for people and homes, this is something that the county is well positioned to respond to, having completed both population and housing projections with Watson Associates earlier this year. We're certainly incorporating that work and those numbers into all of the analyses that we're doing in terms of official plan reviews, settlement area analysis. And so it's really well positioned us to respond to this direction from the province. In terms of housing, no surprise there. A lot of comments about 1.5 million homes by 2031. They are still very much wanting to meet that target, though I think as we've noted in the media and with CMHC, we are falling far behind that target already. And I would say that's also something that we've observed here locally. What we have done at the county is tried to make as many changes to bring about a more housing-friendly climate for investment. And many of the changes that we have made were really rather proactive with the housing-friendly amendments that were done in each of the 9 local official plans, as well as the 9 zoning bylaws, making housing as of right, making more permissive environment for higher density forms of housing, specifically targeting rental, things that will be affordable over the long term. And so this is work that Huron County has already put in place, and therefore we don't have as many amendments to do when it comes to bringing ourselves into conformity with provincial direction. In terms of settlement areas and settlement boundary adjustments, over the years, council will have been used to planners using the words municipal comprehensive review. And this was an undertaking that had to be done if there was ever a change to a settlement area boundary, if we wanted to expand a settlement area. And oftentimes in rural contexts, it was quite difficult to really make the arguments, because while we might have too much land designated in one settlement area, we don't have enough land designated in another settlement area, and de-designation is not a popular undertaking. There's also the need oftentimes to adjust where settlement areas are, and we want to make sure that we're aligning that work with infrastructure. So if we think about, if I'll use any one of the larger towns, perhaps on the west end of a given municipality, we have pump stations with capacity, we have infrastructure sort of ready to be extended or better utilized through higher density housing. On another side of that same town, you might have lands designated, but you don't have the infrastructure there. And that's where we really need to make sure that as we're doing land needs assessment across the county, that we're closely aligning infrastructure investments with our settlement area boundaries. So that's something council can expect to hear more about moving forward. I would say that overall, the altered direction for settlement area boundary expansions is less rigorous, potentially, but there's still those key requirements for good planning, to be comprehensive, facilitated with infrastructure. And again, Huron County is very well positioned. Back in 2020, some of you'll remember, we did a growth planning best practices guide for the county. And this is a document that we're using regularly, again, when we're looking at settlement area expansions and growth potential. No major changes in terms of employment. This is all very in line with how we're planning for employment areas today. I'd say same with sewage, water, and stormwater. I think what we're noting there is, again, just that need to have really up-to-date and accurate information about where future investments for water and wastewater are going to occur. So I would reference South Huron right now. This year, they've done a 2024 water wastewater master plan. At the same time, we're doing the official plan 5-year review. So those two processes are working in lockstep to make sure that at the end of the day, we have the right areas designated for growth, completely in alignment with the investment that South Huron has made in infrastructure. So again, if your municipality is thinking about a 5-year review, if we know that's coming up, certainly making sure that we have all that infrastructure information up to date and available is the best way to make sure that we make sure that those analyses are really comprehensive and lead to opportunities for our community for growth. In terms of energy, I would say this is certainly an area where both the county and local official plans would benefit from an updated energy policy framework. Council will be aware that the Green Energy Act was repealed a number of years ago, and at the end of August, we did see the largest procurement of energy from the province. They are looking at a 60% rise in the demand for electricity by 2050. And so we want to make sure that as these proposals are coming out, whether it be solar, wind, compressed air energy, we want to be thinking about making sure that our policy frameworks have really conceived of the opportunities and thought about where we'd like to direct those, where we think it's appropriate potentially on prime ag land, where we think it's not appropriate and we'd like to direct elsewhere. So that is something for not only the county official plan, but for each local official plan that we will want to have a discussion about the energy framework. Okay. For agriculture, a number of changes in agriculture. Certainly happy to see the 3-lot policy was removed from the provincial planning statement in response to the farm group's advocacy of that policy not being in the best interest of agriculture. But there are some changes. And previously, the province had required municipalities within the Greater Golden Horseshoe to use what was called an agricultural systems approach. So what this looked at is 2 components. One, it's the land base. So looking at the land, the size of the parcels, the Canada land inventory in terms of the classification of agricultural land. And the second component is looking at all of the agri-food sector pieces along the value chain. So everything from drainage contractors to large animal vets, to elevators, to agronomists, literally everything across the value chain is part of our agricultural system. Again, previously, the provincial planning statement would have said that they encourage municipalities to use an agricultural systems approach. We are now required to use that approach. So that is something you can expect to hear a bit more about from the planning department, as well as agricultural impact assessments are now required for a range of applications. And in Huron County, as you can imagine, we really don't do much planning that doesn't have an evaluation of agricultural impacts. So this is something that, again, councils can expect to hear more about. We are going to be very intentional in how we're planning for agriculture moving forward. Not that we haven't been to date, but we do have new direction, so we will be falling in line. I would also say one of the other things that came out in the provincial planning statement is a requirement that municipalities now permit additional residential units on farms. So this is no news for us in Huron County. We did this several years ago, again, as part of that housing friendly review. And again, as you've driven around the countryside, as I have, they are popping up all over the place. And so this is a great example of a policy that was, number one, proactive. We didn't wait for the province's direction. We could see this opportunity and we sought to put it in place across the county. It's being used for multi-generational family situations. It's being used for farm labor. So lots of uptake on this policy. And I think we're going to see that more so. I was noticing a new one just as I drove. It was a dairy farm in Bluewater. And again, it does look like a new general coach sort of up on the hill as you drive by, which is a great thing to see for the county. I would note that the policy approach taken by the province is exactly what we have done here in Huron County, so there's no amendments to be made. A minor change to mineral aggregates that I did want to draw council's attention to. One was just noting that no requirement for pits that go subwater to be rehabilitated to agriculture. Again, a bit of an obvious thing, but they have put that in. I would say that there has been a number of changes in recognizing compressed air energy storage facilities, specifically on retired petroleum resource operations. We have had one proposal for a compressed air energy storage facility. We have 2. One is operational and store here in Goderich. It's on Mill Road. The second is in the Stanley ward of Bluewater, and it did seek, the proposal was to utilize a former natural gas vault. So just wanted to note for council, previously the provincial planning statement would have been essentially silent on this type of use, and now it's been integrated into the policy framework. So I think it's reasonable to expect that we may see more proposals of that nature. Finally, we would note that there are some changes in terms of our recognition in the county and local official plans of how we work with Indigenous communities, specifically consultation requirements, and making sure that it's clear from the get-go that consultation with Indigenous nations is an absolute requirement for planning applications. And we also want to be clear that when there's 5-year reviews, for example, we've been doing one in South Huron, and we've had active consultation back and forth with the local Indigenous nation, which has proved very effective. And again, it's been a meaningful process. I do think that we have work to do on this, and we want to certainly reflect that in the local plans. Finally, I would say, there is certainly a clear requirement from the county or from the province that municipalities need to keep zoning bylaws up to date, need to keep local official plans up to date with provincial planning statements. I would say that there are areas of the province that potentially struggled to do this more so than we have in Huron County. As I've noted for you a few times this morning, we've been quite proactive, and so we do not have as many changes required to our planning frameworks. They are being kept up to date actively. So the recommendation this morning is for this report be received for recommendation. And second of all, that County Council would direct planning and development staff to bring back a terms of reference for what we're calling the conformity amendment for the new provincial planning statement. You'll note under next steps, I have noted those items that would need to be addressed, and have also noted that following the county official plan amendment, we would also seek to do any updates as required, if you think of the energy one, for example, to the local official plans, and that work would roll out over the next 12 to 24 months. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Denise, for your presentation to council. And I will go first for questions or comments to Councillor Harding, please.
Denise will be getting sick of me asking this question because I think she's been present when I asked before. How hard is it to get a settlement area switched to another area? Like what I'm proposing is we have a 50-acre farm that's no good for growing anything but houses, and we have some good agricultural land that's being ate up in a couple developments. So I'm running out of land here. But is there any support from the planners in a project like that? Like, how hard is that to accomplish?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Harding. Denise, please.
Yes, through the warden. So the idea of creating a new settlement area, what the provincial planning statement would direct is that there has to be sufficient investment in not only the housing, but in all of the services that would come to support. So water infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, the roads, parks, soft services, so things that would help support the viability of that space, whether it be, a library or other type of social service. So it is quite a high bar. I would say be difficult. Certainly we can look at opportunities if it is felt that there are lands within either, let's say, Roxton, Fordwich or Gorey, which are not suitable to development. Let's say, for example, because they're constrained by a natural hazard, a floodplain. Certainly possible we could de-designate that space and look at designating on another part of those communities. I think we already have, community halls, you have great parks, there are, commercial spaces within each one of those villages. So I think we'd really want to be assessing, would a new settlement area contribute more so to the vibrancy of Howick Township, or is there an opportunity to enhance one of the existing villages and meet those goals?
Thanks for your response. You okay with that? Yep, good, thank you. Any further questions or comments of Denise on her presentation to us this morning? And if not, thank you very much, Denise, for bringing us up to date on this. And I would entertain a mover and a seconder to receive this report titled New Provincial Planning Statement as being presented for information, and to direct staff to prepare terms of reference with this. And that would be Jay Heffer and Councillor Finch. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. And again, thanks very much, Denise. 10.1 under Cultural Services is a Tiger Dunlop Tomb lease agreement. Beth is here to respond to any questions that any members of council may have on this. And if there are none, I would entertain a mover and a seconder to receive this report for information purposes, and that the appropriate bylaw to extend the lease extension be made. And that is Councillor Noel and Harding. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you very much, Beth. And Beth will present to us on item 10.2. That is the museum space terms of reference. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. Excuse me, through you, Mr. Warden. As a reminder to council, this report is coming forward today in follow-up to an earlier report that was received by County Council regarding storage space at the museum. It was indicated at the time that the museum is running out of space. There is a consultant's report from 2014 that indicated the museum required an additional 4,000 square feet of space to properly store artifacts to current standards and practices. Since that time, work has been completed to move corporate records, which was being housed in museum storage, out of that space, and that is now complete. The museum has also been working on deaccessioning artifacts where appropriate. During this time, the museum has continued collecting, including the transfer of objects from the North Huron Museum. Those are currently occupying valuable temporary exhibit space in the museum, and they will be moved over the coming months into the space that was previously occupied by corporate records. Council at the time requested more information on options to address storage space with respect to the museum. And the options presented to council in the report include doing nothing, which would mean at some point in time the museum storage space would become full. There is also a potential option to look at upgrading the current off-site storage facilities, and a third option to build a new larger structure to allow for more storage. The terms of reference looks for initial direction from County Council before using funds from the museum's budget to proceed with any actions. Happy to take any questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Beth. Is there any questions from any members of County Council on this presentation? Councillor Vanstone, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. It says here they would allocate from the museum budget for costing, and I guess that's one of the questions I would have, because I would like to see number C being looked at by this council as long as we have the money to do it. So do we have that money in the budget to get C done?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I will defer to our CAO for comment on this, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Warden, my recommendation would be that if there is an option that is put on the table by council, that we have that option included in the 2025 budget for consideration, and you know, at that time, then it would be included in the budget. But certainly those numbers would not have been included in the budget for this year because that direction had not been received by council ahead of the 24 budget coming forward.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And actually, I'm going to defer to our clerk. We all see we'll receive it for information. That would be the first part of the motion. And further that, clerk, do you have some clarification or comments on that, please?
Thank you, Warden. So what we're proposing, I believe, is the motion, the last part of the motion just be tweaked slightly. And that's the Council of the County of Huron requests a staff report on the museum space option, whether you choose A, B, or C, as presented with funds being included in the 2025 museum budget for costing information.
Okay, thank you for that. And that kind of dovetails into what your comment was, Councillor Vanstone. So that's why I asked the clerk to read that. Okay, any additional questions or comments of Beth on this? Past Warden again, please.
Yes, I guess one of the good things about being around for a while, I've visited those sites out there, the two storage sheds out there, and I think to try to renovate them would be throwing good money after bad. I think the only option we have is to either investigate a new building or get out of the business of having a museum. If we're going to have a museum, we've got to store this stuff properly. So I would propose a motion that we investigate the cost of a new storage building. Item C.
Okay, are you making that motion now, or do you want to hear you're making that motion now?
I am, yes.
Okay, we have a motion that is put forward, and that is seconded by Councillor Harding. No, we need a seconder. Okay, it'd be seconders, Councillor Vance. So now we'll go to Councillor Harding for comment, please.
I don't know if anybody's listening to CKNX anymore, but I did hear a report that the county of Bruce is in the same predicament as we are as far as museum space. So they did a little study, staff, and I don't know if any of Beth's staff's ever been talking to them or not. But if I remember correctly, they said $3 million to build this building that the Bruce County wanted. And it wasn't in the budget, so they quickly shelved it till the next budget. So that's just for comment.
Okay, thank you for that. Additional comments, and I'm going to go to past Warden McClellan and then Councillor Klopp on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I've also visited the sites as Councillor Ginn has talked about, and yeah, I agree. I don't think what's there is worth fixing. I'm more concerned about what our plan is going forward. History is continuing. We're always going to have more and more artifacts that we could. Once we've decided on a new storage facility, if that's the direction we go, at what point are we going to say, okay, we now have all the space that we need, and if we get more stuff, we have to make a decision about whether something stays, something goes, or whatever. That's got to be part of the overall discussion. Either that, or you have to just say, we're just going to keep adding on to the museum itself. There's more to this than just whether we fix up a storage facility. We need to know what the plan is for the next 100 years going forward, because there's always going to be important things that come along that we want to save or display at some point, but then does that knock something else out, and what will those criterias be to determine what we keep and what we don't keep? Because over history, we will always have more and more opportunity to have stuff collected. So I think part of the overall discussion is having whatever that policy is going forward to determine what our final goal is going to be for the museum itself.
Yep. Thank you very much for that comment. History evolves, as it will. Councillor Klopp, please.
Thank you. I guess that dovetails on this motion. I concur with my fellow councillor. So this motion is to come back with a price of a new building. That's all we're voting on.
Thank you for the question. CAO, please.
Clear up.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Warden, absolutely. It would be for taking a look at if council is interested in a particular scenario, I would have the director work on costing, and that would include the price of a new building, but it would also, like, are there any impacts in terms of operational costs? Are there, like, if we are including consultants in providing advice to county council, what would those costs look like? So what we didn't want to have happen is for us to explore options without really having a good sense that council truly is interested in learning more about a particular scenario.
Thank you for that. Councillor Klopp, are you good to that?
Yeah, I think so, although I'm a little concerned there's more in the motion than just giving us a price. If we decide, like, if I see a price of something, I think that's going to galvanize discussion. So if we find you use your best practices through Beth to say what would be the right building, and it's X dollars, then we see that as council, and then I think the discussion will evolve to what Councillor McCollum just brought up about okay, where do we draw the lines, and maybe at that point we may ask for other people to give their input, but I think the public will be listening to them. So if this motion, I'll support. If it's really only at this time to have the staff do their best to show what a new building would be their best bet, and then I think the discussion will evolve, because I do believe it has to. Unfortunately, at some point, you can't just keep building the ark bigger. I don't think the public expected that when we started museums, but anyway.
Okay, so, thank you for your comment. CAO, please.
Yeah, so even coming up with those numbers requires us to go to an architect to come up with numbers that then come back to county council, and we don't have those numbers in our budget. So those numbers would be included in the 2025 budget, and that then would result in a discussion about whether or not we're moving in that direction. But, if you think to some of our affordable housing builds, we came to county council ahead of time to say, we need to spend money in order to get these dollars in front of county council. Are we okay with that? We received direction from county council that was okay, and we were able to move those forward. But we don't want to spend those dollars unless we have approval from county council ahead of time.
Thank you for that clarification. It's very accurate. Okay. Further discussion on the motion. I'm going to ask you to read the motion. Okay. Councillor Anderson, please.
Just for clarification, Warden, could I please have the motion reread?
Absolutely. I just asked for that to happen. Absolutely. Okay. Clerk, please.
Moved by Councillor Ginn, seconded by Councillor Vanstone. The Council of the County of Huron receives a report by Beth Rumble, County Librarian and Director of Cultural Services, titled Museum Space Terms of Reference, dated October 2nd, 2024, as presented for information. And further that, the Council of the County of Huron requests staff prepare a report on the museum space option C to investigate the cost of a new offsite storage building as presented, with funds being included in the 2025 museum budget costing information.
Okay. We're all clear on the motion? All in favor of the motion is read. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Now we will move on to administration policies and other issues. And the first would be the terms of reference for long-term care follow-up report. And our CAO is here to respond to any questions that council may have on this. Do we have any questions on this report? And if I see none, Councillor Klopp, please.
Yeah, and then thank you for this. I'm not sure when we get we've got a lot packaged in there, and it's based on the long-term care follow-up report, which I thank Susan for sending me the copy again, and of course it was marked confidential. So and yet in this report, I'm asking myself to support something which I think has some discussion based on a report that was in camera. So I'm a little I'm just a process here, I guess.
Okay, no worries. I will defer to our CAO for a response, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Warden. So there was information that came forward to County Council. We were looking at a number of different scenarios for how we move forward in terms of understanding long-term care and its future in Huron County. The scenario where staff were asked then to come back with what it would look like to conduct a third-party audit of the homes, to potentially look at things like efficiencies, to ensure that organizational structures, those kinds of things, anything relating to financials, we are doing things as effectively as possible. What this report does is it outlines how we would go about doing that, what those next steps would be. One of the most important things for me is to gesture to County Council that we haven't forgotten. And what we would anticipate is that we would include those dollars, because it would be a third party that we would engage to do this work with us. We would include those dollars in the 2025 budget for consideration of council. Again, I don't want to include those dollars in the 2025 budget unless council gestures to us that they are confident and they're feeling good about us moving forward with this particular project.
Thank you for that clarification. A follow-up, Councillor Klopp, and then Pastor Warden McClellan.
Yeah, and I have to be careful with my words here, but I don't recall us making a direction in camera on any of those ideas. They were just presented as information, but that's number one. And then also, what is again, is it come to council with, here's the potential costs for this, and then we decide if we want to keep it in the budget or change it. That's kind of that's two questions.
Okay, thank you very much to do that for that, and I will defer to our CEO, please.
Yeah, certainly through you, Mr. Warden. There was a motion and closed, and the clerk has a record of that motion, and that is why this report is coming forward for consideration of council. And that is exactly what would happen, is that those dollars would be included in the 2025 budget, and that would be, before anything were to happen, that would be for consideration of county council.
Thank you for that.
And nice, clear. Then at that point, then if it goes forward, then you do the process of hiring, et cetera. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Pastor Warden McClellan, do you have a comment or a question, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. I would like to move ahead with this, and part of my reasoning is that this is such a large topic that although we've discussed it at different times, different aspects about it, we've never been able to get all the information down in one day. And the unfortunate part is we get some information and then it's a month or 2 months later and we get more information. And I'm not blaming staff about it. It's just the way it works out and how much time we have to put on the table to discuss some of these things. And we never get the whole picture all at once. And so I would like to see what it would cost to actually have a third party to do some of this. So I'd like to move ahead with this. I did have one other question. I was having a discussion with someone sometime in the last month and talked about the wait lists. And they told me that, and I believe it was CCAC, has changed the way wait lists are done because of the fact that there was a lot of bad numbers in wait lists. And I think it's even been reported here that we've had people that have gone through the wait list from top to bottom so many times that we've literally taken them off the list, which means that we are getting through those lists. Can I just get clarification from staff? Are they aware of the fact that there was a change to the way that those wait lists are now calculated?
Okay, thank you very much. I will defer to staff for comment. CAO, please.
Yeah, actually, I think Dana is keen to respond to this question. Next.
Dana, please.
Thank you, through you, Warden. So the way the wait lists have changed is based on the hospital availability of space in the hospital. So there's a lot of ALC beds there, awaiting long-term care beds. So they go into crisis. So they jump to the top of the list because they're designated crisis. So that wait list, if you're number 3 on the wait list, for example, that doesn't really mean that you're going to be the third person admitted into long-term care. The crisis list always overrides the wait list. So it is a bit tricky then to, give a number of where you are on that wait list. Wait lists are long. There are people that are waiting a long time to get into long-term care. That is not changing anytime soon. Our wait list last time I checked was 187, and Huron Lee was 143. So we still have substantial wait lists, and some people that are number 3 are still staying as number 3 on the list. So, and we've admitted several. We've had a lot of admissions this year, over 50 this year. So they're not getting smaller at this point in time.
Thank you for that clarification. You're good with that, Past Warden McClellan?
Yeah, I appreciate the answer, Mr. Warden. I just find it odd that it seems that we're taking people that are listed as critical out of a hospital and putting them into a long-term care, if I understood the explanation, which seems like a little bit of a backward situation. But if that's the way it is, that's fine.
I don't think that's an entirely accurate comment, so I will defer again to Dana for a response, please.
Through you, Warden. They're crisis, so they're either not able to go back to home. So whether they've had a fall or a failure to thrive at home and ended up in the hospital, so they're not able to go back home. So essentially, they would be deemed homeless, for lack of a better term. So they would not be able to return to their home. So they would take precedence over somebody who was, still at home but needing to go to long-term care.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Warden. And I'd like to approve the idea of going forward with staff here.
Okay, you'd make that a motion?
I would.
Seconder for that, Councillor Bazinet. And then I'm going to go to Councillor Anderson for comment, please.
Thank you, Warden. Just for clarification, Dana, so when someone's in the hospital, they don't necessarily, if they're on a wait list for a long-term care facility, they don't necessarily go to the facility of their choice. They could go to one within a certain radius. Is that still the case?
Thanks for the question. Dana, please.
Through you, Warden. Yes, it depends as well, deemed on crisis. They're not pushing people as far, depending on the hospital availability. There's several factors as to why they would be pushed to, they still get to choose a home. They would just encourage them to pick more homes rather than, you know, the first, I think initially you pick 3 homes of your choosing. And then if you are deemed crisis and they need you to get into a home sooner, they may ask you to broaden your search and pick an additional 5 homes, for example. We are receiving residents from out of Huron County, but typically the ones that we are receiving are based on wanting to move to this area because they have family here. So that we aren't seeing somebody who doesn't want to be in Huron County because they've been pushed here. That was kind of the concern at one point in time, but we aren't seeing that here. Not at Huron View or Huron Lee at this time anyways.
Thank you for the response. You're good with that, Councillor Anders. Any further discussion? We have a motion that has been moved and seconded to receive this report titled Terms of Reference for Long-Term Care Facilities as presented for information. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you very much for that. On to number 2 under administration, and that is the strategic priorities. And again, our CAO is here to respond to any questions the council may have on this. Any questions on this? And if not, I would entertain a mover and a seconder to receive this report titled Strategic Priorities as presented for information. Anderson and Dietrich. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried again. Thank you. We have a number of items of correspondence that are listed. Is there anything that anyone would like to pull? And if not, I would entertain a mover and a seconder. The Huron County Council accepts correspondence not specifically dealt with for information. And that is P. Heffer and Councillor Bazinet. All in favor of this motion? That again is carried. If there is any new or unfinished business, I would suggest to contact the CAO in advance so that it could be published on a future agenda. Item 13.1 has been deleted. Is there a notice of motion that anyone has for a future meeting? Seeing none, we have 4 bylaws, and I would entertain a mover and a seconder that these be introduced, be given a first, second, and third and final reading of the 4 bylaws that are printed. Councillor Finch and Becker, all in favor of this motion. And that again is carried. I thank you. We do have a closed to the public session today. And so I would entertain a mover and a seconder. The Council of the County of Huron does now go into a close to the public session at 10:42 a.m. under Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss an item that relates to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality of local board, Exeter. And further that the CAO, Megan Work, Clerk Susan Cronin, Director of Corporate Services Michael Blumhagen, Director of Public Works Imrad Collad, Manager of Public Works Andrew Maver, and Solicitor Greg Stewart remain in attendance. All in favor of this motion? That is carried. Howbeit we have a recess for 5 minutes to allow our clerk to secure the meeting. So we will come back at 10:50 a.m. 7 minutes. Okay, we're now back in our open session, and I would entertain a mover and a seconder to rise from our closed session, please. Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Noel, that the Council of the County of Huron rise from closed to the public session at 11:29 a.m. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. And I will report it first.
No,
I would call on Councillor Klopp for a comment at this time, and then I'll call on our CAO for reporting out. Please, Councillor Klopp.
Thank you. Whereas I, Paul Klopp, have a perceived pecuniary interest with respect to Clause 16 of the report closed to public session, I therefore declare a perceived pecuniary interest, and the general nature of my interest is as follows. One of the affected properties that may be discussed in camera, my son has a lease agreement on the identified property.
Thank you very much for that. Now I'll go to our CAO for reporting out of our closed session, please. CAO Work.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Warden, the purpose of going into close today was for council to discuss a proposed or pending acquisition of land.
Thank you very much for that. And I would entertain a mover and a seconder that we proceed as per direction given in the closed session. Moved by Councillor P. Heffer, seconded by Councillor Harding. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. I thank you. The upcoming meetings tomorrow morning is Economic Development, the Library Board next Wednesday, and Council Day 2 is the 16th of October. Mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw, please. Councillor Vanstone moves, seconded by Alan McClellan, that the Corporation of County of Huron confirm the proceedings, that it be introduced, give first, second, and third reading, and a seal of the corporation affixed thereto. All in favor of this motion? And that is carried. And a thank you very much to all members of County Council and to our staff for your thoughtful input today. And a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Councillors Dietrich and J. Heffer, that the Council of the County of Huron do now adjourn to meet again at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, the 16th of October, or at the call of the warden and the clerk. And we adjourn at 11:31 a.m. All in favor of the motion? That is carried. Thanks very much all. Please enjoy the rest of your day.